drafting a fantasy football team can be a lot like dating. On that first date, everything seems to be great on the surface. She's smart, she's attractive, she's funny, everything that you would need. She feels like she's the complete package. But there's little subtle hints throughout the date where you leave yourself thinking, is this enough for me to basically move on from? Because maybe there's a little bit of crazy in there. Maybe there's something that's just saying to you, hey, don't do it. So, is this person going to be someone you see yourself being with for the rest of your life, or stabbing you in your sleep? Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and today's video is all about some guys that I am currently avoiding because there's just some subtle hints, some things about their profile in 2022 that don't excite me. They worry me a little bit, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not we push those to the side and we just look at some of the surface numbers and say, hey, we got to go with what we've got here. Or if we do say, hey, these little spots right here, they could spell disaster for us. We got to be really careful with that. But before we jump in to all of the content, we have got to announce our last draft guide giveaway winner, and that is going to be my man, Teenage Temper. We're leaving a comment on the next Cooper Kupp video, which did get over 1,500 likes. So I'm going to be giving away a draft guide to Teenage Temper because of that. And hey, same thing here. If this video gets over 1,500 likes, I'm going to be giving away another draft guide. So hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, leave a comment down below so I can potentially pick you. And do me a favor, if you're into sports memorabilia or really any type of collecting, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be Marvel, it could be sports, it could be something super obscure. Head over to Pristine Auction and sign up for a free account using code word headliners, because they're going to give you a coupon for $10 off your first winning bid. This place is absolutely awesome. See this helmet right here? Pristine Auction. Pristine Auction. Pristine Auction. Pristine Auction. Lots of Pristine Auction stuff. So make sure that you head over there and do that. They are supplying a bunch of our giveaways this season. And the more of you that sign up, even if you don't end up buying a whole lot, hey, still sign up. Let them know Headliner Nation is here for it. And let's see what else they might be willing to send our way. But time to talk about some guys I'm going to be skipping out on this year. Some guys I just need to avoid because, again, there's little things that worry me. And the first person up is going to be Clyde EdwardsHelaire. In 2021, he finished as the RB41 with 107 fantasy points. His current ADP puts him at 6 overall, and he's the running back 27. Now, here is my concern with Clyde EdwardsHelaire. And you're going to see here on the screen, taken from Pro Football Reference, some of his statistics from 2020. His rookie season, it was up and down. Now, I still remember that we told people drafting CEH in the first round was going to be a huge mistake not to do it. He goes off for 138 yards and a touchdown in his first game, and we were told how stupid we were for the next 7 days until week 2 when he only had 38 yards. And then he had 64. And then he had 64. And then he had 40. His first season really was very underwhelming. I mean, he did average over 4 yards per carry, but look at the inconsistencies in those numbers there. There was some very big performances, and then there was a whole lot of performances that ended up losing you weeks. And in fact, when you take a look at some of those deep diving statistics, some of those efficiency numbers, they weren't great. His 0.19 avoided tackles per attempt were only 19th among running backs. His 2.98 yards after contact per attempt were tied for 21st, and his 21% breakaway yards was 41st. Now, breakaway yards are yards that were picked up on runs of 15 or more yards. So his explosiveness wasn't really there, which was kind of the reason people were drafting him, because that's what he was known for coming out of college, his explosiveness and being able to make those plays. And he didn't really do that. Now we go to 2021, and 2021 was even worse. Now, he was injured and he was banged up, obviously, for a portion of the season. But if it weren't for the run at the last end of the season where the dude scored 4 touchdowns over his final 5 weeks there that you can see, really he would have been completely fantasy irrelevant. And the numbers, when you take a look at those efficiency numbers again, they were even worse. 0.13 avoided tackles per attempt, tied for 47th. 2.39 yards after contact per attempt, tied for 54th, and 9.3 breakaway percentage. That was 59th. So his efficiency has gone down the last 2 years, which is not what you want to see. Now, this year they did bring in Ronald Jones, but the guy that I'm telling everybody to now turn to that you have to keep your eye on is Isaiah Pacheco, and we're going to be bringing him up. We are going to be bringing him up in an upcoming video, so keep an eye on him. But Pacheco is a guy that at the end of your drafts for the Kansas City Chiefs, spend a draft pick on this guy because a lot of people believe, number one, he's the fastest running back in camp. So he's even more explosive than what CEH is. And number two, a lot of people are comparing him to Kareem Hunt. Because of that, I'm wondering if CEH is a guy that if he doesn't come out and go gangbusters to begin the season, if he is underwhelming like he has been, Pacheco is going to potentially be stealing that job. CEH, I'm out on some other ADP options in his area. You can go with A.J. Dillon right before him at running back 26. You've got Rashad Penny at running back 30. I know people are concerned about him because they love Kenneth Walker, but Rashad Penny, when you take a look at the first team snaps in training camp so far, Rashad Penny is getting like 93% of the first team snaps. He is going to be the guy to begin the season. Yes, injury prone, but is he really any more of a risk than what CEH is a little bit later? Then you've got Kareem Hunt. Yes, he's asked for a trade. I don't think he's going to be traded. And then Tony Pollard, who we know last year started to really make himself relevant in that Cowboys offense, and expect him to do the same again this year as well. Moving on to another running back, and this one really, really hurts because I love him. It's David Montgomery. I love David Montgomery. I was a big fan of him coming out of college. Unfortunately, he got kind of a bad rap because I don't remember who it was, but during one of his college games, they put up a graphic, and they basically said like he had the power of Zeke and the receiving ability of Le'Veon Bell and the speed of, I don't even remember who, but it was like every top running back is what they compared him to, and they just did him a disservice because that's not who David Montgomery was. He's a very good running back, but he's not all of the great backs combined. It's just, it was crazy to see that. And I think a lot of people have kind of hated on him because of that, and that's not what it is. But in 2021, he did finish as the RB21 with 175 fantasy points. His current ADP places him at 33 overall as the running back 16. Now, my biggest issue with David Montgomery is the offensive line. Last year, their run blocking was coming in at a 63.4 grade from Pro Football Focus, ranking them as the 21st overall offensive line in terms of run blocking, and that's just not anything that you want to see. In this season, the offensive line is expected to be worse. Right now, our ranks in the draft guide put him as the worst offensive line in all of football. And if you look at many other outlets, I haven't seen an outlet that has ranked him above 25. They are being considered a bottom tier offensive line this season. And I don't blame people. It is not an offensive line that has been good. And when you take a look at David Montgomery, he has had to be very effective in terms of his efficiency. Now, last season, he was beat up a little bit, but I want to go back to 2020, RB1 year, I believe he finished, depending on your format, is the RB either 4 or 5 that season. But in 2020, he had some decent efficiency numbers. He had 0.22 avoided tackles per attempt, tied him fifth among running backs, and then he had 54 avoided tackles, which were fourth. But this is where things end up coming into play, okay? So he had great efficiency numbers in terms of trying to make people miss. But then when you take a look at it, his 3.15 yards per contact per attempt were only 16th in the league, and then his 4.33 yards per attempt were 28th in the league. So yes, he does a pretty decent job of making people miss and getting you those extra yards, but when you have a really bad offensive line that is allowing people to collapse on you very quickly, even if you're very efficient in some areas, your overall numbers are not going to come to fruition because you're not going to be able to get a whole lot after the fact. And that's why I'm concerned about David Montgomery. Yes, he does have some elite skills. Yes, he is a guy that is definitely capable of making you miss, running you over, getting those extra yards. But if you can't block for him, it doesn't matter how good he is in those areas, it's still going to be an issue for him to put up high ranking numbers where this is a guy that you're like every single week, I feel comfortable putting him in my lineup. And if you're drafting him as your RB2, you should feel comfortable with your RB2 in your lineup. Now, one thing I do want everyone to keep in mind, last season, 225 attempts, 849 yards, 7 touchdowns, only averaged 3.8 yards per attempt. Khalil Herbert is still there. Now, I don't believe Khalil Herbert is any better than David Montgomery, but he did average 4.2 yards per attempt. And in the games that David Montgomery missed last season, Khalil Herbert, before he got hurt, he looked really good. He also looked really good. And now this is a new coaching staff, a new group of people who didn't draft David Montgomery. So they might be thinking to themselves, we need to see a little bit of Khalil Herbert as well. And oh, by the way, they didn't help. They did not help Justin Fields at all. They brought in N'Keal Harry. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Yep. Velus Jones. I mean, this dude is on ARP already. Their top wide receiver pick is like 37 years old and going to dinner, getting the Denny's dinner discount at like $4.55 in the afternoon. So they have done nothing to help Justin Fields. And if this offensive line is as bad as it's going to be and people crash on Justin Fields and look to stop the run game, there might just not be enough opportunity for David Montgomery to be safe this season. Other ADP options in his area that you could take a shot on, Ezekiel Elliott, the RB15, going right before him. You've got James Conner at RB18 and Elijah Mitchell, who I did a must-have video on, or a breakout video on, a couple weeks ago at RB21. I definitely think could end up finishing higher than David Montgomery. Love David Montgomery. It's just not something that it's just not something that I see ourselves investing in and getting a really good return on value. And if David Montgomery hurts, this one hurts even more because I do consider myself to be one of the top Darren Waller breakout callers before the 2019 season. This was a guy that was on my breakout tight end list. And one of the reasons why I've been given the name of tight end whisperer was because of that Darren Waller caller before the season. In 2021, finished as a tight end 18, only 106 fantasy points. We know he missed 6 games. 6 games. Current ADP 49 overall as the tight end 5. I'm just not comfortable with it because Darren Waller, over the course of his breakout seasons, 2019, 20, and this past season, has been a volume-dependent tight end. In 2019, 7.3 targets a game, 5.6 receptions per game, 71.6 yards per game. And 2020 takes a little bit of a step up, 9.1 targets a game, 6.6 receptions a game, 74.5 yards per game. And then this past year, we saw a little bit of a dip back from 2020 numbers, 8.4 targets per game, 5 receptions per game, only 60.4 yards per game. So all of these things coming into play, definitely a guy when you look at him, he's been a tight end that has given you so much volume that he has been a consistent start on a weekly basis. In fact, he led the team in targets in 2019 and 2020. And when you take a look at those, you're probably going to be saying, well, Kyle, of course he did. They didn't really have any weapons. Aha, you're right. They didn't have any weapons, and now they do. Hunter Renfrow with a breakout year last year, finishing as a wide receiver 1, 128 targets. You're bringing in Davante Adams, who you would have to expect at minimum sees 150 plus targets. If you're going to be giving Hunter Renfrow anywhere to 100 and 120 targets, if you're going to be giving Darren Waller, or if you're going to be giving if you're going to be giving Davante Adams 150 plus targets, now all of a sudden you're taking a look at Darren Waller and saying he's no longer the number 1 target on his team. At this point, he could definitely drop down to number 3. And if that happens, that's where we start looking at it now and saying, okay, Darren Waller is going to lose some volume, but does he make up for it in efficiency? Well, over the course of his career so far, he hasn't been ultra efficient in the passing game. If you're comparing him to other tight end options, in fact, he's actually on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to efficiency, even more enforcing the fact that this is a guy that depends on a lot of volume. In 2020, his big year in 2020, 8.09 ADOT, average depth of target, which was 24th. He had 8.54 yards per target, which was tied for 18th. This is among tight ends. 11.18 yards per reception, 25th. And 5.5 yards after the catch per reception, also 25th among tight ends. When you take a look at other guys in the same arena and you look back to a guy like Travis Kelce in 2020, who is kind of the standard for the tight end position, he was 8th in ADOT, 10th in yards per target, 7th in yards per reception, and just barely above Waller in yards after the catch per reception. So when you look at these top tight end guys and you say to yourself, can Waller actually fit into this? Can he be a top 5 tight end? Could he? Absolutely, he could be. I don't doubt that for a second. But I've got him outside my top 5 tight ends right now because the volume we have to assume will more than likely go down, knowing that he's no longer the number 1 target in his offense. Number 2, we look at his efficiency over the course of his career and realize it hasn't been that good. Now, if you have Devontae Adams and you have Hunter Renfrow, and people are going to be paying more attention to them, that obviously means that efficiency could end up going up. But how high does it go up? Those are all questions. If he was a guy that was getting a ton of volume and getting the efficiency with it, we would be good. I'd be sold. I'd be fine. But you might be saying to me, Kyle, well, of course, the more targets, the more volume he gets, the less efficient he's going to be. But that's why I dropped Travis Kelce in here. So you could see that at the tight end position that it is possible to do both. And Kelce being the gold standard for the position, Darren Waller being really right behind him the last couple of years, he's a guy that has been able to keep up both. So it is absolutely possible. So what other ADP options am I taking a look at? Well, George Kittle at tight end 4 is a guy that I'm definitely taking a look at right now. Dalton Schultz at tight end 7. Dallas Goedert at tight end 8, and Zach Ertz at tight end 10. With George Kittle, I'm willing to risk any type of an injury concern that you have because I did a must-have video with him the other day. He was included in it. Dalton Schultz is going to be getting 557 targets this season. He's going to be firmly behind CeeDee Lamb as the number 2. And as we saw last year, if you watch the tape, if you watch the Dallas Cowboys play, he was the guy for Dak Prescott. He was the safety blanket. Dallas Goedert was one of the most efficient tight ends in all of football last year. Jalen Hurts has looked awful in camp so far. I do believe he is going to have to lean on Dallas Goedert to be kind of a safety valve for him. And Zach Ertz, with there being no DeAndre Hopkins to start the season, definitely a guy that could see a crap ton of volume to kick things off. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Really went through a lot of information there for you in a relatively short amount of time. Trying to keep this video a little bit on the shorter side just because I know when we start getting to like 20-25 minutes, people might tune out a little bit. So I'm trying to get better at getting the videos a little bit quicker and still getting you all the information in a very, very detailed format. But don't forget, hit the like button for me. At 1,500 likes, we're going to give away a draft guide. Leave a comment down below. If you do, you might be one of the people that are lucky enough to snag our 2022 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to subscribe and stick around for the rest of the offseason content and the season coming up because it is going to be some massive, massive things happening here at the Fantasy Headliners. So everybody out there, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out. I appreciate everybody tuning into this video, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. Y'all stuck on third down. Your content's plain Jane. Headliners on top now. We gonna move and change. Podcast off the rip. Draft guide, so legit. Fantasy world, our game tight. You know we about that Chubb life. Stuck in a rut and you need some motivation. Head to the channel for this Headliner Nation.
I'm a headliner.